Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cyber Future Dialogue Davos 2024. I'm so excited that I lost my voice. Okay, and then I had to develop a baritone just to make things look better. I know it's a very, very rough trip coming out here, but I am sure it's worth it, right? But don't be too distracted on that side. I actually prefer to have curtains here, but they forgot, so that you pay attention this side. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you all for joining us. You know, every new year, this is something that we wait for, to get on top of the Alps here, and you know, really inspiring. If you look outside, I mean, there's a reason probably WEF has this in Davos. Well, if WEF has in Davos down there, we are up here, so a little bit of leg up on that. So this year is kind of another marquee year for the Cyber Future Foundation community. As you know, many of you, I'll probably have to reintroduce myself. Okay, I will not. I'm Val Mukherjee. I'm the chairman and founder of Cyber Future Foundation, supported by the great group here, and particularly our two great friends, Catherine and Leah. Great to have them, you know, support this year over year. And most of you are community volunteers, so you know, each of your contribution is absolutely recognized and well received. If you think about 2023 was so many ways, you know, really challenging. And 2024, I believe a lot of us just feel that we have learned enough to handle the year ahead of us. But again, you don't know what will be thrown at us, right? We had one war to deal with, and then we have another conflict coming up. Especially most of us in the security business, you know, we are one way or the other connected. The wars are not, you know, they are not only kinetic now. Cyber is a big part of that. We'll talk through that. A little bit of background of the Cyber Future Dialogue program. You know, we got here just to make sure that, you know, the business leaders or the national security leaders, whoever shows up down on the promenade, have access to some of the brightest minds in cybersecurity, you know, who are assembled here. And this is our 5th year. We of course did 1 year. We skipped 1 year for the live event we did. This year again, great to be back with this cast of crew, which cannot be beat. A little bit of the run of the show. We have 3 sessions to start with. Each session is about 35 minutes. We have a couple of announcement and key and what do you say is executive inspiring statements in the middle, 15-20 minutes. We have three of those 15-minute sessions. 2 of them are going to be announcement. 1 of them is going to be kind of ideation of what we do here. As I'm opening up today in the afternoon, you know, some of us have to scoot, I know, from this room, go down to another event. So Daniel will be here closing the day. During the breaks, you can actually bring food in. I'd rather, you know, I'd request you to just sit around here so that we can have the flow. This is a lot of sessions back to back without much break. So I understand. Please feel free to get out. You know, use the restroom. It's right back there. If you go up and to the right, we are kind of covering the way to the direct way to the restroom, but you can go around that. And the folks here are amazing. They're going to take care of you and show you. You know, we'll have 2 breaks. We'll have food up here in a little bit. I hope most of you had breakfast or so. I was trying to make sure that you come here well fed, because the kitchen doesn't open until 11 o'clock. The other part of this is, if you see the agenda, you will see that each of the sessions are tied to a project that we do, right? And I cannot emphasize the fact that, you know, we gather here for events, which is essential for us to come together as a community. But the work that we do every day really matters. And many of you, I think most of you are actually involved on a day-to-day basis. So glad to have your support and contribution. The other part is, there are 3 projects that we kicked off in 2023 Davos, and they have really taken on a life of their own. The Cyber Board Book project, which we'll kick off this discussion today with, around the evolving role of the CISOs is going to be one key one. The second project that we kicked off was just around, you know, it's a bit reactive around responding to the Gen AI movement that just came up from nowhere and just took us all by the storm. You know, we have some of the best minds come together to build the responsible and secure AI for future working group. Please take a listen. The third project we just started to support a framework of generally acceptable cybersecurity principles. If you think about it, our profession is very new. Like, we're just growing and learning what we do and what will be acceptable, what is not. Whereas if you look at the other trades like finance and accounting, legal, medical professions, they have a pretty good code of conduct and charter of profession that's assigned. So we, at the very early stage of defining what it would look like, last 3 or 4 months now, it's been led by Charles Blauner. I wish he was here. He was the he was the first, opening panel. Charles was in Davos, but hopefully he'll feel strong enough to come here next year. But a group of 24 CISOs have started building that out. You should see some of those announcements coming up. Beyond that, there is cyber, our Project Indigo around supporting Ukraine now extended to, other parts of the world. We have our great friend here, Joe, who's directly working on the Ukraine Help Friends project and several others. You have the cyber capacity building project Gateway. So each of these, I would really like to get your thoughts. If you see, we really don't have a scripted run-up show, and that's by design. Every year when you come here, we speak on a topic, we ask 3 things. What's your experience on a particular topic that, that you have chosen? I think any of you can speak of any of these topics. That's the beauty of this team here. But we focus on 3 things. What is that you have seen has been the progress on that particular topic, whether it's evolution of CISO, or it's, engagement between the board and the cyber, or it's, kind of reacting to something like Gen AI, or developing the next level of our professional practice. We want to know you are tracking the progress year over year, and this so that we can take your inputs. Then we talk about what's the current state, right? What we are doing now. That would be meaningful. And then we close up with what is your wish, right? I mean, very simple. This and I think these 3 things have to be done over and over again so that we can see. Many of you have come here year after year, so we can see how we are progressing. Okay, so that's kind of the ground rule. We'll get on with our first panel session. I think we'll try to keep it as much as on time because these guys I really love. But I have to thank Shatzalp and Paolo and his team to actually have given us this space. There is huge demand. They do 20 events in 3 days, and they've always reserved this space for us. So, really, really privileged to have you and all in this forum. So the first session, we're going to talk about the evolution of the CISOs, and I think it's a very, very pertinent and timely topic. We have had, right in the room, you have Joe going through his whole, case, and then we have the SolarWinds CISO Tim Brown going through this. So I think this is just coming. We have 8 more who are getting ready to be, I can't say indicted, but have gone through this motion. So in the first session, we're going to talk about the evolving role of the CISOs in 3 aspects. One is how does the overall cyber program look in the lens of a CISO, because you have such a big mandate now, it's already expanding every day. Second, we're going to look at the top engagement, like the board level engagements. Third, we're going to talk about the downstream, as cybersecurity programs grow, how do you arrange your teams and how do you source them? Okay, all right. So, Kevin, come up here. Sri. And who are we missing? Okay, all right. Sorry, I have to go get my copy of agenda so that I stay online. If you stay here, then I'll just switch it on. Okay, awesome. Now, sit down. I think Julia takes one picture and then we kick off. Yeah. Awesome, thank you. All right, so again, I think this is probably one of the most important topics to kick this discussion off, because it all leads from here. The CISO role has really gained the prominence from last several years, as you can imagine in your roles and your engagement with the roles. So let's do a quick introduction, through this, and then we'll turn to topics. Okay? Sure. Starting with you.
Sure. So I'm Kevin McCarty. I'm the CISO for Cigna Healthcare.
Dimitri was supervisory board member of a Ukrainian state-owned bank during 4 years, where I was supervising cyber tech operations IT, and I'm running my own consultancy in Geneva.
I'm Sri Puthucode. I'm the CRO for Valmiki. Valmiki is a AI-powered cyber risk management, quantitative cyber risk management platform, and we're serving a bunch of Fortune 500s.
Marcel, Zumbuehl, I'm the group CISO of Swiss Post, and those of you who came by cable car, you've seen our ad. And I'm also a board director to Hacknowledge and to Teractive, which are two cybersecurity companies in Switzerland.
Excellent. Thank you all. So you can see this is a pretty comprehensive panel to get started off with. Kevin, maybe just start with you on your thoughts around the evolving role of CISO, and you have grown in this space. So what do you see is the evolution?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting past couple of years, right? Starting in 2020, where we've seen the regulatory environment change, and so I think that's a heavy influence on what we're doing from a cybersecurity perspective. Particularly if you are in a heavily regulated industry, we saw regulators do what they love to do when it comes to cybersecurity, and that's regulate it. And so we've been adapting quickly, right, to some of the rule changes. What we've seen with the SEC, the U.S. SEC, with the incident disclosure cyber rule change. Certainly, any financial internationally that's doing business in New York, we've got significant cyber regulations that have come on starting this year that you have to adhere to with the New York DFS. And it's been an interesting journey as we look at these things. The cyber rule, the incident disclosure rule is definitely putting pressure on CISOs and the C-level and the board level as well in terms of making sort of quick decisions about what's material, right? And so we've adjusted sort of we have at Cigna our plan in terms of determining materiality in a quick, within a 4-day period, right, and being able to notify through an 8K. With the New York DFS, which is also an interesting regulation, and I think that's a precursor that we'll see sort of worldwide, right, where they're adding rule changes that I would say compel the board and C-levels to take a more active role in their cybersecurity programs, whether it's approving cybersecurity policies, reporting, right, material deficiencies, right, or vulnerabilities, right, is a change this year. And what CISO would want to provide a regulator, sort of how they're tracking against vulnerabilities, right? It's a significant challenge. So with all of that regulatory backdrop, that is shifting the way that we're interfacing with our partners across our risk partners across the organization, whether it's the chief compliance officer, regulatory leads in the legal department, to come up with stronger plans, right? There's not a lot of guidelines with these regulations as well. Yeah. And so you're sort of forced to figure this out. And so it's a very collaborative community in the cyber world. So we're all talking amongst ourselves to figure out what's the best way to meet these. But ultimately, we've got to have strong plans in place. We've got to execute on those plans and document it well, right? Because that's what the regulators are going to be looking at. So that's a big shift, is where you'll see a lot more integration, I think, between those risk partners within the organization. And it's also shifting some of the things that we're thinking about from a strategy perspective too, incorporating better cyber risk quantification methodology, so we can speak the language that our risk partners do in the organization and to the board. We're trying to get a better visibility around data within the environment, because most companies are leveraging data, right, to increase growth. And that's absolutely a main factor in terms of determining your value, right, for your assets. So that's just some of it. I'll pipe down and let some of the other folks chime in, but that's sort of the backdrop for me is definitely the regulatory changes that we've seen.
I'm sure. I mean, that's probably just a few of the many, right? But I think that sets the stage for what we're up for. Dimitri, you have you have both in an operational role now. You're helping and advising the industry, and what Kevin mentioned probably is American or a little bit of international global. But what's your take on the global regulatory situation? I mean, expand on to your experience.
Well, we have more and more pressure, it's sure. We see DORA coming, we see NISTO coming, which are going to play an important role. But if you think about it, in fact, it's a regulation that comes to patch the deficiencies of IT and the CIOs in general, right? Because at some point, there is not enough responsibility from my point of view, and this is why we have this CISO function. There is not enough responsibility in the CIOs to build resilient infrastructure that the regulator has to come and say, okay, it's finished, guys, right? I mean, stop the game. Now you have to become serious. And the regulator starts pushing pressure on that. And in fact, that we have, the CIO role and the CISO role, which are separated, puts some, let's say, it puts an interesting question, as if the CIO is not responsible for security. It's the CISO who is responsible for security, right? Although I believe if we want to design security, if we want to have security by design and security by default embedded in our IT infrastructures, then the burden should be put on the CIO. And this, I believe this is why we have those regulations coming more and more pressing us.
Very true. I think, the role of CISO cannot be discussed without the role of CIO and the other C-suite stakeholders that are there. So absolutely, I think we'll dig into that a little bit more. Thank you, Dimitri. Sri, you are taking these problem statements, and you are, as a technologist, your company and such as others, they're building solutions that will help automate this process, right? And also give it more consistency. What's your take on how the technologists are responding to this issue?
So, I'll kick off with two very interesting metrics or data points that I was, Googling last night. Actually, ChatGPT, not even Google. So we'll talk about the weaponization of ChatGPT too. But what I found interesting was, so there's a bloom and a doom, right? So let me start with the doom. In the Fortune 500, S&P 500 companies, there's only 1.4% of companies, that's about 7, that have a board of directors that had any cyber experience, right? Similar metrics around the Russell 2000, which is the next level down. About 95% of the Russell 2000 board does not have any cyber experience, right? Now, the bloom there is, and this made me really chuckle and made me really delighted, right? 2018, same set of companies, about S&P 500, there were only 70% of S&P 500 companies that actually had a CISO. Fast forward, blame it on COVID or digital transformation, 100% companies now have a CISO, right? 100% of the Fortune, S&P 500, right? So there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel, right? And Kevin alluded to earlier, right? Vendors have to come together, sure. It's a lack of visibility and automation, right? That's really the key themes that we are, working with a bunch of large organizations and CISOs on, right? You don't know what you don't know, right? So essentially, you will only be able to fix something that you measure, and you will only be able to measure something that you're observing, right? So it's all a cycle, and essentially starts with observability, getting a good sense of your asset inventory, and then tying it to business outcomes, right? Cybersecurity has been a very technical function for a long time, and the role of CISO over the last 10, 15 years has evolved because of regulations for sure. The nexus is the wrong word, but the integration of cybersecurity with business outcomes and, board strategy, cyber metrics is a big, topic of discussion for a lot of our CISOs, the CISOs that we work with, right? And then last but not the least, trying to quantify all of this, right? Because I think that was missing for a long time. If you look at everything that we do, GPA. I mean, you're in a school, you get quantified by how good you are based on your GPA. I mean, your bank balance, right? Everything has a number associated. Why has the vulnerabilities, that you were alluding to, Dimitri, were always, red, amber, yellow, right? I mean, why is there no dollars associated, right? So I think that's where the industry is really moving. And of course, the regulatory compliance, SEC requirements, I think those will basically push us towards, absolutely a better world, I think.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, and then probably that's hope brings us up here. And I'm really hopeful that we will be solving specific problems that can be solved with automation with support from human, right? So nobody's going anywhere. Right, that Marcel, again, you have been part of this crew for some time. Just the great work. First, I have to acknowledge Marcel's contribution to the cyber board book work. He is in probably 40 or 50 sessions that we do. He would come out and spend time and review. So some of these discussions that we're having here need further drill down, and that's what we do through the last year. So Marcel, your take on how it's evolved.
When I look back, and I'm like 25 years now in the industry, the first years was all about technology, right? It was a technology function. Then it became customer-centric. We wanted to make sure that we communicate to our customers how safe our products are. We started to be certified. Certification came into play. And all of a sudden, cyber risk became a mainstream risk. So the board got involved. The executive board and the board of directors wanted to know what is our exposure in million Swiss francs or $1 million. And can we afford it, or do we go bankrupt? And what if we have a cyber incident? And it felt to me like we're waiting until the cyber incident happens, and that's the end of the story. And then we realized maybe not. Maybe a cyber incident is actually a moment. People are listening to the company, especially customers are listening. They want to see how the company does, how transparent the company is, how open it is to the media and customers. And by the way, last week we gave the second Swiss IEEE Courage Award to companies that came out courageously when having a cyber incident. And one of them on stage was the Swiss Federal Department for Police. Right? They were there, they had an incident, and the director took to the stage and talked about it. So, bravo, right?
Absolutely.
The next step, however, is regulations, and you talked about that. Now we have politics coming into play, trying to regulate, trying to make meaningful regulations. Not just drilling down on reporting, because when cyber departments get clogged by just reporting, they don't do cybersecurity anymore. So we as CISOs need to be involved in politics as well. Switzerland issued its first information security law last year, and the debate in the parliament went well right into the second session, and all of a sudden it took a detour when politics asked for every vulnerability to be disclosed within 25 hours, critical vulnerability of critical infrastructures. That's when we took the stage and started to talk about with politicians about, is this the right way to go? Okay with reporting cyber incidents, that's okay. We all gain from transparency, but we don't gain from having an Excel where all the critical vulnerabilities are listed, and critical vulnerability, critical infrastructure, XYZ affected. That doesn't help anyone on the planet. So we've seen the same regulation in the US. It didn't make it to the House. Unfortunately, it made it to the House in Switzerland, but we were able to seize it and gently move it out of politics as well, right? Yeah. So I think this is the next stage of CISOs to not just accept regulations, but really to contribute to make it meaningful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that effort, I think, is going on in the US. Even you and others are also involved in that. One interesting fact that happened, that we are seeing is every quarter, every month, there is new regulation coming in. I was just in India right before coming here, and the new regulation kicked off in India, as in every company operating in India has to report their cybersecurity incidents to cert.in 2 hours to 6 hours, between 2 hours to 6 hours. And it doesn't say, yeah, I don't know who wrote that, but again, 2 to 6 hours. It doesn't say what severity, it doesn't say what, but it's a criminally punishable offense if you don't do it. So my last, before coming here, in my CISO role, I have been trying to scramble and find out, how do we have the lawyers ready for this? Because, going to jail in US is, I don't know, but again, going to jail in India is going to be pretty terrible, I'm sure. All right. So, Kevin, what do you predict 2024 is going to look like? How are actions and collaboration that Marcel talked about? We are doing this in the US as well. How do you see the regulators respond?
Yeah, so I agree. I think CISOs are taking a more active role in risk executives and helping influence, right, some of the regulators and doing it through political channels in the U.S. for sure. And I think also just with this threat of increased regulation, right, we are seeing significant shifts and transformations, I think, in the way that companies are trying to address the cyber risk. And having that better visibility, and I think it's absolutely key for CISOs to become business enablers, right? Because that is the way to have regulation alone is not going to force companies to embrace the CISOs, and we have been sort of living in that world of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and coming to our C-levels and to the board with here's red, yellow, and green without really telling them what is the difference between us? What are the real key security risks that we need to address? Because we're not getting significant investment, and I've seen polls left and right with CISOs in terms of how you're funded this year going into 2024, and I think 50% are about flat. And flat to me means you've got a little bit of a decrease with inflationary pressure. Very small amount, maybe 5 or 10% are getting a slight increase, and some are actually getting a decrease. So we're not getting significant investment in the security programs to address sort of these regulatory changes in the ever-increasing threat landscape that we see. So we've got to be smarter, right, about how we're addressing the risk in the organization. It's about getting better visibility across our assets and getting to more finite ways that we can define the risk, and having those more responsible conversations with our risk partners throughout the company and with the board to say, this is where specifically we need to, this is where we're going to be the most impactful, from a risk perspective. We invest in these things or address these particular cyber risks that we see. So that's been sort of the dramatic shift, and I think that's going to continue, right? And I've talked about it a little bit before. I think we will see a wider adoption of cyber risk quantification. We will see organizations trying to get better aggregate. We love tools. CISOs love tools. We've got tools all over, tools that find a whole bunch of things, right? That's what we love. But I think we'll see a shift too, is that in finding sort of not all the one tools, but tools that are going to give us better capability to see the signal through the noise, right? To really see where we see the biggest risks and how do we address those risks and have the most impact from being more impactful from an overall cyber risk perspective.
So since we're talking about tools and cyber risk, Sri, I'll go to you for sort of cyber risk quantification. It's been gaining maturity over a period of time. There's quite a few vendors in this space. How do you see this standardized, getting more and more adopted, with the aim of reducing the burden and also the cost? Right?
Yeah.
Those are two issues. We don't have too many resources. So if you automate the right thing. What's your take on what do you expect to see here?
See, coming out of COVID, last year was all about doing more with less. I mean, I was talking to someone, I was talking to Desai here, and then she's like, doing more with, what did you say? Same.
Doing more with
What I have, that's right, yeah. But I think that has been a consistent theme now, right? I mean, doing more with less. And that's giving birth to, of course, I'll come to the tools shamelessly, but that's giving birth to what I call a very new superhuman CISO plus function, right? I mean, I've been selling to CISOs for the last 18 years now, all the way from Qualys days, right? I mean, it was a very technical sale. It was a very network security type sale, right? Now, it's all about risk. How do you tie risk back to business outcomes? How do you tie risk back to your corporate strategy, right? I mean, who are the constituents, right? I mean, it's not just security, it's legal, compliance, finance, right? In a lot of ways. I mean, hiring is a big part of that, right? I mean, the leadership, how do you bring the new set of security leaders, right? But coming to the tool side of things, I think talking about materiality from this perspective of SEC, I mean, having that at fingertips, AI is, I mean, everyone's talking about AI. I mean, and honestly, if you are a mid-sized company, even Cigna or say an AT&T, right? 1 million assets, you're talking 20 lifetimes for 50 people to just go through it manually, right? There's no, it's not humanly possible to do some of these things, without automation and AI, right? So the general theme's gonna be visibility, automation, AI, creating what I call the brain of the cybersecurity function, and then quantification, right? I mean, the whole red, yellow, green is not gonna work. I mean, it's gonna be with this particular asset, this particular vulnerability, what is the business impact? What happens if this goes down? What is the brand reputation? What is the other, intangible costs that, companies have to face? I think those are really what we're seeing in the market gain traction more and more.
Well, that's great. I think we'll move to Marcel and then come back to Dimitri further.
I guess with cybersecurity risk being one of the mainstream risks now, we can also borrow the tools from enterprise risk management. That's what we do. We drill down our cybersecurity risks to million Swiss francs, and the essence is the dialogue with the business, and making people understand what an impact of a cybersecurity incident will be, and not just in terms of going out of business for a couple of days and moving back, but also what is the implication on the market? How many customers are we going to lose? How much do we have to invest into marketing to win them back? We are a logistics company, right? So one of the main cybersecurity risks is a cyber attack to one of our distribution centers, sorting centers, right? We have like 10 big ones in Switzerland. What if one is out, right? And they you talk to business to business line guys, and they'll tell you, well, taking out one center, that's like a fire, right? If a fire burns, then we'll sort in another one. They say, no, this is a cybersecurity incident. An attack against one center attacks the other centers as well. We've seen that with EP World, for example, or other logistics companies around the globe. We don't have to look far of what happened to Royal Mail, for example, right? So it's not just one site, it's several sites the same moment, the same day, right? And that's when our guys switched and said, oh, okay, maybe we have to think about it differently. It's not, we just sort another side. We need to talk to our competition. Can they help us? We have to reach out to our customers because we might be out of business for days and weeks, right? So this is really helpful. It all boils down to the meaningful discussion we have to have, not just with the board, but also with the business lines on it. And that's where risk methodology helps.
Well, thank you, Marcel. Dimitri, what's your take on the whole growth of this process?
Well, there are several points I can comment. One point I think you mentioned about cyber attacks is the impact on the customers, but I believe it's not only on the customers, it's also on the employees. Mm-hmm. Because suddenly you kind of lose faith in your company. You were sure you're secure, you're sustainable, blah, 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 and suddenly you're in the news, you cannot work. I think it's also gaining, again, the confidence of your employees, right? Mm-hmm. But you spoke about the politicians, mm-hmm. And I just want to step back a little bit about this. So I've been working in Ukraine, heavily involved. We were a very specific supervisory board. Within 4 years, we had more than 150 supervisory board meetings and more than 500 committees. So that was very hands-on, and we really had to turn the bank around. We've seen in this conflict the difference, and I witnessed that. I started working in Ukraine in 2004, and I saw how the generations evolved. And there is, in fact, it's a long-term evolution, right? You want to set up a system that prevents cyber attacks. It takes you, I don't know, several months maybe, and that's all is set up. If you want to change the mind, if you want to change the culture of people, it takes one generation. It takes a lot of time. And I believe that the role of the CISO today is quite unsustainable if you look at the burden we have on our shoulders. I was recently reading there is a website called the CISO Mind Map. which lists a lot of skills and a lot of attributions and a lot of responsibilities the CISOs have on their shoulders. And if we want to deleverage that, if we want to put more and realize security by design and security by default, I think we have to lobby the politicians to, and the educational facilities, the business schools, the engineering schools, they should embed security in the education programs. Because you cannot do like several years of coding, and at the end of the curriculum, you have 2 hours about penetration testing and vulnerability scanning and code testing, right? If you don't do that from the very beginning, embedded in the programs, there is no way that we are going to win this battle, to win this fight. Because we at the CISO, you said exactly, we wait for the cyber attack to come to start doing something, right? So if we still have CIOs building and companies building networks which are not segregated, which I remember one, you probably remember this famous cyber attack in 2015 on the international French channel TV5 Monde. Mm-hmm. And they interviewed the CIO, and I remember this famous word of the CIO who said, "I don't understand, our firewall is almost new." And I was like, what the hell does this mean? Well, almost new. Almost what? Almost new for what, right? So if we still have this mentality, there's no way we're going to win this battle. So, and the CISOs will always come, repairing what is wrong by design. So I think we have to lobby the politicians. We have to lobby the education facilities, systems, to embed security in the programs, in the engineering programs. And then we are going to build new generations of people who are risk aware. And then the CISO can come as a second line of defense and say, okay, instead of saying you have to encrypt, he might say you encrypted with the wrong algorithm, but at least there is one, there is encryption which is embedded.
Okay, all right, maybe that's why there are more CISOs taking up CIO jobs, if you track. Marcel, we'll close up this way. Okay.
There's one thing that helps us for the next generation and for really people joining cybersecurity. That is, cybersecurity is fun. There's a lot of fun elements to it. We really fun, right? So we wouldn't be here if it wasn't that way, right? Would we? We're talking about tools. My biggest tool as a CISO is hackers. I'm working with a large community of hackers through bug bounty programs. We have one of the largest bug bounty programs at least in Switzerland, maybe even in Europe. And we've taken to the stage in hacker competitions, like in Paris 2022. Our partner, Yes We Hack, asked us if we wanted to take the stage and give 150 of their top hackers the possibility to hack the whole surface of Swiss Post in 25 hours.
Yeah.
I said, yes, well, we're coming. We're sending a team, 5 hours. It started at 10 o'clock in the evening or 8 o'clock in the evening and went all through the night into the morning. I called the team every second hour to find out if I lost my job. But this was so exciting. And they found 22 vulnerabilities. One of them was critical. We wrote the media article on the next day because that was our goal. Yeah. To say we are forward-thinking. We want to know the vulnerabilities we have today, and you're coming out stronger. So this has influenced also people internally, developers that wanted to contribute. We've grown a network of people. Of security champions that really contribute from the inside as well, that bring security into development. Excellent. So it ties back to it's fun.
It has to be fun. It has to be fun. It has to be interesting. It has to be exciting for anybody to get into this job also, right? I mean, yes. The amount of stress and strain we deal with. So, congrats on getting the layman's of cybersecurity. That was like even 1 hour more than the Le Mans, right? It's 24 or 25 hours. All right, let's close out this way, Sri. Your last few comments on the topic.
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely the function and the role has evolved. It's become much more complex. I think collaboration is definitely a key element of making it and getting it right. And Marcel, you said this, right? I mean, secure by design, right? I mean, that should be the theme, because for every security guy, there are 100 developers. How do you keep up? I mean, it cannot be an afterthought. It has to be built in while you're doing things. Of course, there will be vulnerabilities. I just saw yesterday, Microsoft was, the largest company on the planet. That's why they have so many products and everything else. So of course, vulnerabilities will be there by design. So you just have to be at the forefront of it. Identification, visibility, automation. I think those are all, the key. And then of course, hiring the right person, right? I mean, with the right attitude that wants to have fun, sure, right? I think bringing the community together, vendors, CISOs, all of those, and having these kinds of panels where we talk openly about the problems. I think these are all, things in progress. And that's why I started with the gloom, but the bloom is that we will see 100% or at least 60% of boards where, there is a security function that's sitting at the table.
Yeah, excellent. I'm into that. Dimitri, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, considering the CISO role as a guy playing with tools is definitely wrong. I mean, it's going to get us nowhere. We really have to pick up people who are able to speak the business, the language of the business, who are really able to understand what the company is doing, what the strategy of the company. And sometimes I consider this role as a bridge between the business and the IT, right? Someone who is able to link those two worlds who have high difficulties speaking together, because it involves a lot of people and process before technology. And if you are able to understand what people and processes are, then you start digging into other functions that are involved in a company, like HR, like general management, of course, but HR and finance and so on, and then you start playing a role that is as bridging those two worlds.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Dimitri. I'll have you the last word, Kevin.
I'll be quick. Maybe it's a bit of advice, right? We talked about the burden for CISOs, and certainly there's now a personal liability piece to it as well. And my ask, right, to our risk partners, to the leadership, to the board, is to create a better environment for the CISOs to thrive in, right? So that we want to continue to be CISOs. We want the best and brightest to be able to run cyber organizations, and I think there's a lot of pressure at the moment where you're seeing some CISOs who don't want to be CISOs anymore and move on to something different. We've got friends in the community who have been targeted, and we are all noticing and talking about it, right? And so what do we need to do from a corporate perspective is make sure that you're giving the CISOs level transparency and access, right, to have the appropriate conversations about cyber risk, because it is a true business risk, and allowing them to build in that structure that they need and the ability to escalate as quickly as possible and have that support, make sure that they are covered by directors and officer liability insurance, right? That's not a given for many CISOs, right. And it's a tremendous amount of exposure for them. So I would say last sort of statement is make sure you're embracing the CISOs, allowing them to thrive, building that structure for them to thrive in a corporation.
Awesome, awesome. So great thoughts. I think, big round of applause for the think thoughts. Those are clear. Okay, excellent. Thank you, gentlemen.